Luka's Lakers look lethargic. Bobby and the Bucks get bad news. Now I'm going to make Haize say something nice about the Clippers. All that and more on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day, being an everyday or hanging out with us both on our daily show here and on game night, which you can find in your feed every single night after all the action concludes. Glad to have you with us. Thanks for being a part of our community. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, co-host of Locked On Nuggets. I'm joined by Haize from Locked On Bulls. Doug Branson's on assignment trying to find a Kemba Walker bobblehead. We're going to get into a number of things today. We're going to talk about the MVP race and whether it's a wrap. We're going to talk about the Phoenix Suns and the Chicago Bulls and which team has a more optimistic outlook on their future. We're going to get into a lot of stuff today, including we talked about Ja Moran and the idea of him being traded. Well, the Grizzlies had their say on that as well. But we'll start today, Haize, with this. Are the Lakers doomed? Oh, God. It's all over. The Luka trade's a disaster. The Lakers lose to the Hornets. You can check out the reaction to that game from game night. We're going to get into like a little bit of a more specific thing here of let's look a little bit forward, and I'm going to give you a couple of things, and you're going to tell me 1 to 5 how concerned are you. 1 is you're not worried at all, and 5 is absolute panic, like just straight mass hysteria. Okay? Luka doesn't look in shape. He does not look in shape at all. That is not a new development. It's been the topic of a lot of conversation. But like last night, I was listening to Anthony Irwin's Lakers show, and I was listening to Locked On Lakers, and both of them talked about how like Luka just looks winded, like he just does, and nobody wants to overreact. Like nobody wants to overreact. But given he's coming back from injury, but he's coming off the All-Star break, and he is able to play. He played before the All-Star break and after the All-Star break, and yet, like he said very actively, he said he was asked to practice this week. He said, like, yeah, I got away from basketball over the break. Like, how worried are you, short and long term, about Luka still being out of shape and continuing to be out of shape? 1 to 5.
I'd put it at a 2. I'm really not that concerned about it. I mean, he was out of basketball for over a month. And then, yeah, he got away from basketball over the All-Star break. But considering everything that just happened and changed with him, I can't blame him if he had to catch up mentally on just how everything kind of spiraled here over since the trade deadline that ended up sending him to the Lakers. Long term, him being now, I think he's going to take this as a wake-up call. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. I think this trade is going to wake him up. I think he's going to take his conditioning really, really serious going on this offseason and going forward with the rest of his career. So I'll put it at a 2 right now.
I'll put it at a 3. I don't think it's reason for real stress or concern, but I think it's something to keep an eye on in terms of if Shaq had been motivated, healthy, engaged, and in shape, how many titles do you think that team wins with Shaquille O'Neal from 98 to 2005? How many do you think they win? More than 3?
Yeah, probably 4.
Yeah.
So
it's that this is the thing is you could still win championships with Luka Doncic like this. He put up 30, 10, and 10 last year. Like he's a walking triple-double. He's an absolute monster. He's still one of the best players in the world, despite him having never really put the emphasis on his body. If he ever does put his emphasis on his body, then that probably means that they're going to be even better. And like that's the thing is the upside is insane. If you ask like, hey, what's your concern for the rest of the league if Luka Doncic ever decides to get in shape? It's got to be like a 7 on a 1 to 5 scale. But I have like a little bit of concern over it just because he may just decide that that's not what he wants for his life and he never actually does it. And if not, they're still going to be really good and they're probably still going to win a title. That's like the worst case is they only win one title or two titles. That's how good this deal was for them. How about this? Let's look at the short term. The Lakers don't have time to figure out this version of the team this season. Now, they made the move and they've talked a lot about wanting to be patient in the next decade. But like you've got an opportunity this year. LeBron's 40. Time is running out. You are the 4 seed. You do have a chance here. How concerned are you about how they've looked and trying to figure this rotation out and everything out about this team in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're going to have to try to figure some things out, but I think that they know that this isn't the final version of the team. That's why they try to make a trade for somebody like Mark Williams. So in the runway that they have to figure it out this season, I'm going to put that at a 1. I'm not concerned about it because it's not just about the season. I get it. The Laker fans, they want everything and they want it now, and I understand that, but bringing Luka Doncic here to LA always about the long term. So I think we're going to see some very big moves for them to kind of make this roster make more sense heading into next season. And if they're not by then, that's where I'll be a little bit more concerned. But right now, I'll put it at a 1.
Okay, I'm going to go a little higher again here. And again, I want to be very clear. It's not that I'm like, oh, this isn't going to work. This might not work. Like, no, it's going to work and they're going to win titles. But for this season, I think I'm at like a 4 because they don't know how to do this right now. Luka's not in shape. He's on a minutes restriction. Did play 33 minutes last night. LeBron has had a really great stretch of games. What happens when he dips back down again? Because that's what happens with age is your consistency waivers.
Yeah.
Jackson Hayes played pretty well last night, but Vando was an outright disaster. Vando was a minus 17 after Locked On Lakers. Shout out Andy Kaminsky was talking about how basically Jared Vanderbilt was Dennis Rodman. So like I'm a little concerned that maybe they don't have the pieces to actually make a run here. Now maybe they get in the playoffs. I will say I did say this morning on Twitter, and I mean it. They lost to the Hornets. The most NBA thing is that they're going to go on the road or on Saturday and beat the Nuggets in Denver. That would be very NBA like is for them to lose to the Hornets and beat the Nuggets with this new concoction. Final one. Haize, I don't think Austin Reeves fits with this team. I don't think he fits at all. He got ejected last night for arguing with a call, his first ejection in his NBA career. You could cover for him a little bit when you had AD. Can't cover for him now. He's not great as an off-ball third creator. He's not a knockdown shooter. He's a good shooter, but not like a knockdown, lights-out, catch-and-shoot guy. Can't hold up the bench minutes. I don't know that Austin Reeves fits with this team. What's your concern level there?
I'll put that at a 3. Again, it's difficult for me to worry about fit too much, where I do think a lot's going to change about this team in this offseason. But if Luka and Austin Reeves don't fit together, that is a concern. And the Lakers have avoided trading Austin Reeves this whole time up until now because they've been so high on him. Does that now change? Now, do teams are still as interested in Austin Reeves as well? That's a big question there. But so for the remainder of this season, I'm not too worried about it. Long term, I'll put it about a 3.5.
All right, coming up, Bobby Portis got some bad news and is going to miss some significant time due to a suspension. We'll talk about that. Is the MVP race over? Plus, what is over is that the Grizzlies are not trading Ja Moran. All that and more coming up next on Locked On NBA. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. When the games tip off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get it in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. You got to love the live betting stuff because you're going to find a whole bunch of great bets in there. You can actually do live props. You can do the same game parlays are really interesting because you can basically just like fade whatever's going on a little bit. If the team goes down early in the first quarter, come back in on that team on the spread, especially if they're dogs. There's usually a very good value there. And then maybe go the other way on a total. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA, Matt Moore alongside Haize. Bobby Portis got some real bad news. That was the big news on Thursday morning. He was suspended 25 games by the NBA for violation of their anti-drug policy, banned substance. His agent told ESPN in a statement that he was given the wrong medication. He was given tramadol, which was banned last spring, when he thought that he was taking Toradol, which is an allowed painkiller. He's been dealing with an elbow injury, and it was to basically relieve the pain in that. He has a valid prescription for both tramadol and Toradol, right? So the assistant gave him basically the wrong thing, which is a problem. The agent's statement was pretty lengthy and strident in terms of its description. Criticized the NBA for not having more variability and flexibility in their suspension. What's kind of your reaction to this news, both for Portis and the Bucks?
Yeah, it's unfortunate for both sides. I mean, that an honest mistake, which it seems like this is going to lead him to missing the majority of the rest of the regular season. They got 29 games left on their schedule. That means he's going to have 4 games back before the playoffs. Now, luckily, he'll be back by the playoffs, right? And that's the key thing here. But for the Bucks that just made a trade in Kyle Kuzma, they're still trying to figure out some things. They've been playing much better. Bobby Portis is still an important part of that team. It sucks overall, man. And if I'm not mistaken, they said that the substance wasn't on the ban list; it just got added this past spring. So it's unfortunate, but this is why you gotta be on top of what you're taking and putting in your body, because hey, the NBA they give us no leeway for things like this at all.
Yeah, I understand it from the perspective of like, look, you want to set a zero tolerance policy and you want to scare the crap out of everybody, and the best way to do that is to make examples of anybody that gets caught. It's just kind of a bummer that this is like, it's a pain medication. It's not a performance enhancing drug. It's not, prescription pills are obviously like, that's a big, like painkillers are a big problem, but this isn't like a heavy drug, like some of the other things that maybe you could get busted for. I have a hard time kind of getting all that upset about this, especially when the agent coming out and defending it the way that he did was not the normal kind of, my client is innocent. It was much more like, this is not who Bobby is. And we don't have any evidence of that being who Bobby is either. So it just kind of sucks. I also, like, this is going to continue to cause, I think, a little bit of tension. This is the kind of stuff that drives teams crazy, where they have staff and then players have their own medical staff. And I think it's really tough because from the player's perspective, you want your own people because you want to be able to make sure that, like, your business, and you want to make sure that you're being taken care of, versus the team that wants to take care of its business. But the teams are also like, yeah, we have professionals that we know and can trust to avoid situations like this. So I don't know what the right answer is, but it just kind of sucks for the Bucks. They got Kyle Kuzma. They had Jericho Sims. I think the overreaction is kind of an extreme. I'm always very, people have talked about the strength of schedule. I just don't worry about it much. The Suns had like the worst strength of schedule of any team down the stretch last season, and they actually went on a run. Weird stuff happens. I think that when the Bucks get Giannis back, I still kind of think that they can manage and weather the storm. I don't think Portis has been all that vital for them, although they are better with him on the floor by about 2 points per 100 possessions this season. We'll see what happens. I want to get your thoughts on the MVP race, and the reason I wanted to, Chris Broussard over on First Things First on Fox Sports, he may have a vote this season. He may not. He's had one in the past. He said he won't vote for Jokic because he already has 3 MVPs, essentially. That this is what the league has done in the past, is like, we didn't give it to Jordan every year because we want to give it to somebody new. You can't win it every year. And so that, like, to him, that was a valid reason. Straw poll before the All-Star break was 70-30 basically in favor of Shea for first place votes. So I'll ask you, do you think the MVP race is over?
No, I don't. I and maybe that's just me being a little too optimistic. I don't think it should be over. Now, is Shea gonna have a legitimate chance to win? Yes, he should. Should he be the favorite? Yeah, you can make a conversation for that. But I think you can't overlook how good Jokic has been. Like, Jokic has been so special. And this is why, like, the definition of MVP, like, does it go to the best player on the team with the best record? Does it go to the player that is so integral to what their team does? That would be Jokic. And I get it that voter fatigue is a thing for some people, but I just like to think that we're going to be a little bit more objective in our vote and just look at things in that vacuum of what that season is. That's what it should be. I don't care if somebody wins 5 MVPs in a row. If it's warranted, they should win 5 MVPs in a row. Jokic has a legitimate shot, and to say that you're not going to vote for him just because he's won 3 before, I can't vibe with that at all.
Any sort of deep exploration of this, and I spend way too much time on the MVP stuff, but any sort of deep exploration of this is going to, this doesn't hold up under any sort of logical construction. So the idea here is, okay, well, in the past, people who weren't me made this decision about these other players, so I have to hold to that standard so that it's fair across eras. Think about that. Would you ever say, hey, somebody else made a bad decision, so you have to make a bad decision? Would you ever think that? You wouldn't. You'd be like, no, these are my decisions. I get to make my own. Furthermore, you should always kind of be like, well, wait, these decisions were bad. We should try and do better. Like, that should be your kind of outcome here. You shouldn't be like, well, this other person made a bad decision and it hurt somebody else, so I'm going to hurt this person because of that same bad. No, none of this makes any sense. I looked up this morning the straw poll results, and in the last 3 seasons, the person that was ahead on this edition of the straw poll in 2 of the 3 didn't win. Like, there's just it's not that there's a lot of basketball left. I push back at that. Bill Simmons talks a lot about that. Like, there's still a month of play left. My man, we are 60 games through. Like, we are at the end, and we are through most of the meaningful basketball. Not all of it, but most of it. And I understand wanting to look at the entire thing before you make the decision, but we are most of the way through. I still think, though, that most of this is coming from a place where the voters have not actually sat down to do the ballot. They haven't received their ballots. The NBA hasn't sent them out. When they actually sit down to do this work, they're going to look at Jokic is averaging 30, 10, and 10. 30, 12, and 10. A triple-double. He is top 3 in points, rebounds, and assists, and steals. Top 4, in points, rebounds, assists, and steals. Top 4 in the league. He's shooting 60% from 2. He's shooting 47% from 3. And the Nuggets are going to win 53 games. That will at least give you pause. And so the question just kind of becomes, what does OKC do? And that will, again, I think, kind of decide this, that if they win 67 plus games, I think Shea wins. If it's less, I think it's really in question. We told you on earlier this week that that the Grizzlies had kind of been mentioned as Howard Beck had talked to another executive who's not in Memphis. And that executive had said, keep an eye on Ja Moran this summer as another player that might get traded. And that set off like the usual aggregation telephone of like, what will the Grizzlies look for in trade for Ja Moran? It was like, nobody ever said that. No, nobody ever said that the Grizzlies said that. Zach Kleiman reached out to Drew Hill locally in Memphis and talked to him about this decision. And I was like blown away by this comment. Quote, I can't blame other executives for fantasizing about us trading Ja, Kleiman said, but it's just that, fantasy. We're not trading Ja. Continue to underestimate Ja, this team, and this city, and we will let our performance on the floor speak for itself. I'm not going to give this nonsense further oxygen, and I look forward to getting back to basketball. What a statement. Like, you never get this kind of stuff. What was your reaction, and should executives more routinely shut down these trade rumors this way?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love this reaction. I love the vitriol in which he said it with, just the directness of it all, just to shut it down. Like, no, we're not trading Ja. Get over it. And it's unfortunate that this is the place that we have to be with media. Of course, like you said, the aggregators, all those type of things. Like you almost have to, because it just snowballs, right? And I'm not blaming. There's some people who just don't have time to stay on top of all the rumors and look and say, hey, this is actually what was said here, because the aggregators will make it seem like something that it's not. So I appreciate a executive coming out and adamantly saying what they needed to say. And I do think that as we grow and the word media and what media is continues to change and evolve, we are going to have people that are willing to get out ahead of stuff like this and just shut it down.
Oh, I like that comment very much. That's a great point. So talk a little bit more about that from the perspective of how much bigger media is now. And I think that there's this idea among executives that you can just ignore it, that it's just noise. But I think that sometimes the noise winds up becoming a narrative that can impact your season because it is so widespread and omnipresent in our lives. Is that kind of what you're getting out there?
Yeah, for sure. Because like we're always plugged in now. Everybody's always plugged in, right? And so, like for me, before I got into doing this, I used Twitter as basically a way of I followed just the news outlets that I liked, and that was like I used it for my news feed. The a bunch, not everybody has that level of awareness on it. They're gonna see, oh, it's Milwaukee Bucks daily. Let me follow that, not knowing that it's somebody who's just sitting back taking bits and pieces and turning them into headlines to make it seem like it's something else. So media is just it's such a broad term now because everybody technically has a platform, and if you don't know how to break through and know exactly where to go for actual news, it's easy for something to snowball into something much larger than what it originally was.
Coming up, I have a very, very Haize-centered segment to talk about. We're going to talk about the Bulls, we're going to talk about the Suns, and we're going to talk about the Clippers. We'll talk about those teams up next here on Locked On NBA. Final segment here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Your team has a daily newsletter. Go to lockedondaily.com and you can get a Locked On daily newsletter of the team of your choice. It's got writing from Katie Heindel, who's great, Mike Shearer of Basketball Poetry, who's awesome. He does really great in-depth work. You're going to get fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd, which if you're a fantasy basketball player and you're not chasing down everything Josh does, you're losing. You're choosing to lose because he's amazing. Check that out at lockedondaily.com. All right. So, Haize, we don't have a lot of other things going on right now because it's post All-Star break and teams resume play tonight. I want to ask you this, though, because I was kind of thinking about this. The Bulls, Joe Cowley's got a column kind of talking about who the Bulls should keep and who they should let go. And he talks about, like, Kobe White, who was so great last season, is just going to have been mid this season, and how they should keep one of them or White or Ayo Dosunmu, whether they should keep Giddey. Like, there's all these kind of questions. And you talked about the frustration of the 9 or 10 player approach. They re-signed Lonzo. They are no closer to figuring out kind of who they are, I think, than they have ever been. The lottery can change that, though, instantly. Like, that can radically change everything for them. The Phoenix Suns, meanwhile, are in range of a playoff spot. Like, they could make the playoffs. Maybe they could go on a run. They have Kevin Durant. They have Devin Booker. They have Bradley Beal. But there's all this drama. They missed out on Jimmy Butler. All this stuff went on, and they don't own any of their draft picks. Haize, I'm really curious to know this from you. Who's in a worse spot, the Suns or the Bulls?
That is a very great question. Since I saw this on the rundown, I've been thinking about this. I've gone back and forth on it a couple of times because, one, the Bulls owning their own future as far as having their draft picks, that's huge, right? They don't have the star power of like what the Phoenix Suns have on their roster, but they control their own destiny. If they can just draft right, they can get out of this, right? And even that means embracing it. The Phoenix Suns, on the other hand, have a huge roster with a huge luxury tax bill, and they are sitting in a place to where we don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs. Now, they could pivot. They could look to trade Devin Booker. They could look to trade Kevin Durant and really jumpstart going in a different direction. But then at that point, that puts them right where the Bulls are per se. So I'm going to say this. Just by the nature of having your own draft picks, it kind of makes things clear. Even with the Kobe, the Josh Giddey, the Ayo Dosunmu, that conundrum, they're all free agents. Josh Giddey's a free agent at the end of this year. Kobe and Ayo are free agents at the end of next year. So you can break that up and make more sense. They only have one contract over $20 million on the books next year. So I think they have that flexibility where they don't have the huge luxury tax bill either. So I'm going to say, in the sense that because both teams are bad, the Bulls are in a better place. Now, if the Phoenix Suns start waking up and start playing better, then cool. They're in a much better place because you have the talent there. But I think right now, with the place that both these franchises are in, I'll say that the Bulls, because they own their own destiny.
I've done my job for today, which is to make Haize say nice things about the Bulls in the future. I've actually found a framework where the Bulls are in a better spot. We have breaking news. This just came out. This just literally came out seconds ago as we're recording this. Victor Wembanyama is out for the rest of the season with deep vein thrombosis in his shoulder. It's a blood clot. He is out for the remainder of the Spurs regular season. Via Shams Charania of ESPN followed up in an official press release from the Spurs. Deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder. The condition was discovered when Wembanyama returned to San Antonio following the All-Star game in San Francisco. He is expected to miss the remainder of the 24-25 regular season. The team will provide updates as appropriate.
Wow. That's crazy.
That's awful. I'm glad they caught it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing here. That's really dangerous and scary. We'll see what news comes out of this as far as his long-term recovery plan. I think like you say the word thrombosis, which means clot, which I immediately go to Bosch and get terrified. But it is, maybe there have been guys that have also had clots and then been totally fine. They've gotten over it and dealt with it and gotten through it. But man, that is absolutely devastating.
Crazy
for the Spurs. So the Spurs now have to shift towards development. That means that after they trade for De'Aaron Fox, they're going to miss a chance on making the playoffs this season. They'll have to reconfigure this summer. You got to play Castle more. You got to play all the young guys more to try and get some sort of development. We'll see kind of what happens. We don't know a lot right now. This literally just came out as far as what this is going to mean for his future. Right now, it only means the remainder of this season. He has a form of blood clot in his right shoulder, Shams Charania said. This is an isolated condition, the Spurs believe. So that is good news. Hopefully this is a blip on the radar of what should be an absolutely incredible career. Wemby was one of the most impactful players in the NBA this season. We'll see kind of what happens, but man, that is devastating for them. We'll have more reaction on this tomorrow when we know a little bit more on it here on Locked On NBA. Final thing, because, I had to get Haize in on this. Haize has been probably the most, we have an ongoing bit on the show of Haize taking shots at the Clippers. Haize, they're 31-23. Kawhi's only played 15 games this season.
Yeah.
Like they're on track for the playoffs. Is this Clipper season? The wall is amazing. The wall is incredible. Everyone loves Intuit Dome. Is this Clipper season a success?
Yeah, I think I have to say that it is. I think when you look at the way that they've been able to perform without Kawhi, that they actually did with what I think the Philadelphia 76ers were trying to do is build a team that if Embiid's not healthy, we're still a playoff team. Clippers did that. And as much as I crap on the Clippers, I objectively, this season has been a success for the Clippers, in my opinion.
They've been so much better than I thought they would be.
Yeah.
I really thought that they would just kind of like drift through this season and kind of, they're about like a 500 team and maybe they'll fall back a little bit. Their offense really is bad. Like they have a really bad offense. Norman Powell's been great. Harden's been good, if not great. Kawhi's been amazing since he came back. Ivica Zubac is like very quietly DPOY candidate. Like he's been really good. He's been that's how good he's been. I think Chris Dunn has been the best perimeter defender in the NBA this season. I think he's been better than Suggs when Suggs has been healthy. They've had just like an incredible amount of success. So I agree. I think the Clippers somehow, some way have already made the playoffs haven't come and they're already a success. Now, of course, playoffs are around the corner. So the bad news is just around the corner for the Clippers. And we'll
that's
see
typically how it goes for them.
That's how it goes. All right. That's going to do it for Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. We'll have more on the Victor Wembanyama story tomorrow, as well as our favorite things of the week. Doug Branson should be back tomorrow when he gets back from trying to find a way to shape himself into an Adam Morrison mustache. We'll have more for you tomorrow on all things NBA. Make sure to like, review, and subscribe. Feedback's a gift. Check out NBA Game Night after all the games on Thursday. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On NBA.